The planet Zelath was vast and unforgiving. The dark sky was always clouded with swirling dust storms, and the jagged mountain ranges stretched endlessly across the horizon. It was a place where few dared to venture, and those who did often didn't return. Yet, despite the danger, Captain Nathan Voss and his team found themselves on the surface of the war-torn world. They were not here for conquest, but for information. Nathan stood at the front of the group, his breath steady despite the rising tension in the air. His mission was simple: get in, gather intel about the Zelari military, and get out. The Zelari were an alien race known for their strength and mercilessness in battle, and humanity had been watching them closely since the two species had first encountered each other. This reconnaissance mission was important, and Nathan knew he couldn't afford to fail. The wind howled around them as Nathan signaled for his team to move forward. Their boots crunched against the dust-covered ground, and the faint hum of their cloaking devices barely registered over the storm. They had to be careful. The Zelari were not known for their hospitality, and Nathan's gut told him that trouble was never far away. "Stay sharp," Nathan whispered into his comms, his voice low but commanding. "We're almost there." His team nodded, their expressions hidden behind their helmets. They were experts, trained for situations like this, but even they couldn't shake the unease that came with stepping onto an enemy's home planet. The Zelari had a reputation for being brutal, and the last thing they wanted was to be captured. The group moved silently, their path taking them through an ancient alien city, long abandoned but still filled with strange and powerful technology. Nathan's eyes darted to the ruined structures around them, wondering what stories the walls could tell if they could speak. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them rumbled. Nathan's hand instinctively went to his weapon, his pulse quickening. A low growl echoed through the air, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy footfalls. He held up his hand, signaling his team to stop. His heart raced as the sound grew louder, and he felt the presence of something enormous. The ground trembled as a colossal figure emerged from the shadows. The Zelari were a towering species, and this one was unlike any Nathan had ever seen. She stood at least 7 feet tall, her form draped in regal armor adorned with dark, intricate patterns, her eyes glowing faintly with an unnatural light fixed on Nathan and his team. "Humans." Her voice rumbled, deep and powerful. It sent chills down Nathan's spine. Before he could react, her soldiers appeared from the surrounding buildings, encircling them in seconds. They were armed to the teeth, and their weapons glinted in the dim light. Nathan's hand hovered near his weapon, but he knew better than to provoke them. A confrontation here would be disastrous. The Zelari had technology far beyond humanity's capabilities, and a battle would not end in their favor. "Do not resist," the Queen's voice echoed again. "I am Queen Erixal of the Zelari. You are my prisoners now." Nathan's eyes narrowed. "We're not your prisoners. We're here for information." Erixal tilted her head slightly, an amused glint flashing in her eyes. "Information?" she repeated. "You think I do not know why you are here? The humans are always watching, always scheming. But you are not so clever. You came to spy, and now you will be my guests." Nathan was taken aback. The Zelari had always been elusive, and their technology far more advanced than anything humanity could dream of. But this queen, this ruler, was something else entirely. There was a strange energy about her, a power that seemed to radiate from every pore. "We don't want trouble," Nathan said, his voice steady but cautious. "We just need to get back to our ship and leave." "That's all?" The Queen smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. It was something more dangerous. "Oh, you will leave, but not in the way you think," she said, her tone shifting to one of curiosity. "You are different, human. I find it intriguing. Come, I will show you why." Before Nathan could react, one of the Queen's soldiers stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder. With a swift motion, he was pulled from his team and shoved toward the Queen. "Take him to the royal palace," she commanded. "The others may follow, but only if they wish to remain whole." Her soldiers obeyed instantly, leading Nathan away from his team. He tried to resist, but the soldier's grip was too strong. His heart pounded in his chest as he realized just how far he'd fallen into the trap. As they walked, the palace came into view. It was an imposing structure, built into the side of a mountain and surrounded by towering spires that seemed to pierce the sky. The architecture was unlike anything Nathan had ever seen, alien yet eerily beautiful. It was a place of power, and he could feel the weight of it pressing down on him as they drew closer. Nathan's mind raced. What did Queen Erixal mean by different? Was this some kind of psychological game? Or was there something more to it? They entered the palace, and Nathan was led through a long, dimly lit corridor. The walls were adorned with strange, glowing symbols, and the air felt thick with a strange energy. He couldn't help but feel a sense of awe mixed with fear. The Zalari were far more advanced than humanity, and Nathan knew that in their world humans were nothing but ants. At the end of the corridor, they arrived at a large chamber. In the center of the room stood a massive throne, its surface covered in strange alien runes. Sitting upon it was Queen Erixel, her gaze fixed firmly on Nathan. "Welcome to my palace, human," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "You are in my domain now." Nathan stood tall, trying to maintain his composure. "What do you want with me?" he asked, his voice steady despite the growing anxiety in his chest. Erixel smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. There was something predatory about it. "You are here because I want something from you," she replied, her eyes narrowing as she studied him. "Something very important." Nathan frowned. "What could you possibly want from me?" Erixel leaned forward, her eyes glowing with a strange intensity. "You human have something the Zalari need, and I will make sure you give it to us." Nathan felt a cold chill run down his spine as he realized just how serious the situation was. This wasn't about information. This was about something far more dangerous. "You'll learn soon enough, Captain Voss," she said, her voice softening slightly. "The fate of your entire species may depend on it." As Nathan stood before the alien queen, he couldn't help but wonder how far this strange and dangerous game would take him. His mission had changed, and the stakes were higher than he could ever have imagined. Nathan stood still in front of Queen Erixel, his mind racing. The walls of the chamber seemed to close in around him as her gaze never wavered. The room was vast, the air thick with tension, and despite the grandeur of the palace, it all felt like a trap. There was something off about her, something that made him both uneasy and strangely drawn to her. "What do you want from me?" Nathan repeated, trying to steady his voice, but there was no denying the confusion and fear in his chest. Erixel's eyes glinted, a hint of amusement in them. She sat back on her throne, her posture regal yet relaxed. "I told you already," she said slowly, as if explaining to a child. "You human are different. I have studied your kind, and I have seen something in you that my people do not have. You will help us survive." Nathan frowned, not understanding. "Help you survive? How?" "I'm just a soldier. What could I possibly offer that would make a difference to your people?" Her gaze sharpened. "You will understand in time. But first you will stay here with me. We have much to discuss." The way she said "stay here" made Nathan feel like there was no choice in the matter. The soldiers around him were like statues waiting for a command from their queen. He couldn't help but notice how they towered over him. Their presence was overwhelming, like a constant reminder that he was trapped in a world far beyond anything he had ever known. Erixel waved her hand, and one of her servants approached, offering a tray with food and drink. It was strange looking, alien and unfamiliar, but Nathan was hungry and there was little else to do. "I'm sure your food is much different from ours," Erixel said, as if reading his thoughts. "But you will find it nourishing, even if you do not understand its origins." Nathan hesitated, then picked up a piece of the food. It wasn't what he was used to, but his body needed fuel. Slowly he took a bite. Surprisingly, it tasted better than he expected, although still alien to him. "You're not like the others," Erixel continued, her voice softening. "Most humans are afraid of us. They fear our power, our technology. But you are different." Nathan looked at her carefully. "You keep saying that. What do you mean by different?" She stood from her throne, walking toward him with grace and strength. "You humans, your species is young, but your potential is limitless. There is something in your genetics that makes you adaptable, resilient, and that is what we need. I believe it's what I need." Nathan took a step back, sensing her intent before she spoke the words. "What are you saying?" She stopped just in front of him, her towering presence stilling him. "I want you to be the father of my heir." The words hit Nathan like a punch to the stomach. His heart raced, his mind struggling to process what she had just said. A human, the father of a Zalari heir? It seemed impossible. You want me to father your child?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Erixel nodded, her eyes glowing faintly with intensity. "Yes, I have studied your kind, Captain Voss. Your biology is impressive. Your species has traits that my people do not possess. Together our bloodlines could be stronger, our future more secure." Nathan felt a mix of disbelief and confusion. This couldn't be happening. He was a soldier, not some genetic experiment. Yet, as strange as it was, he could see something in her eyes. A deep need, almost desperate. The Queen wasn't asking for something out of malice. She was asking for survival, but why me? Nathan asked. There are other humans, other soldiers. Why pick me? Ericsel's gaze softened slightly, but there was no mistaking the gravity of her words. You are strong, Captain, but more importantly, you have a unique resilience. I've seen it in you already. I've seen it in your crew as well, but none of them possess the qualities I need. You are the one who can help my people help me. Nathan could see the truth in her eyes. Despite the strange request, there was something real behind her words. She wasn't lying, and it wasn't just about some political scheme. The Zalari were in danger of extinction, and perhaps this was the only way to ensure their survival. But that didn't make it any easier. The thought of being part of such a strange and unthinkable bond made his stomach turn. What happens to me after this? Nathan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. What do you do with me? Am I just another pawn in your game? Ericsel's eyes darkened for a moment, but she regained her composure. No, you will not be a pawn. I respect you, Captain. You have shown strength, intelligence, and courage. You will not be discarded, but you will play a role in the future of the Zalari and the future of humanity, and that is more than any other human could ever offer. Nathan thought for a long moment. He could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. The future of an entire species was on his shoulders, and somehow it seemed that the future of humanity was tied to the Zalari as well. I don't understand, he said, his voice quiet now. How does this work? Ericssel took a step closer to him, her presence overwhelming. You will learn, and in time you will understand. Nathan's mind raced. He had no choice. He could not refuse, not when the fate of so many depended on it. He was here now, trapped in a world he didn't understand, and there was no turning back. He could only hope that somehow he would find a way to make sense of it all. As the days passed, Nathan found himself spending more time with Ericssel. At first he was uncomfortable, unsure of what to make of her strange affection. She was different, far different from any human woman he had ever known. She was powerful, intelligent, and enigmatic, and yet as they spent more time together, he began to see a side of her that was not so cold and distant. Ericssel wasn't just a queen. She was a ruler under pressure, struggling to save her people from extinction, and in her own way she seemed to be reaching out to him, not as a tool but as a partner in this strange, uncertain future. Nathan couldn't deny that there was something compelling about her. Her strength, her determination. It was unlike anything he had ever encountered. There was a quiet power in the way she spoke, in the way she carried herself, and despite the strange situation he found himself drawn to her. But there were still so many unanswered questions. What would become of him? Would he truly play a part in the survival of the Zalari? Would this strange bond between them really change the future of both their peoples? As Nathan sat in the dimly lit chamber later that evening, his thoughts swirling in every direction, Ericssel appeared in the doorway. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held something else, something softer, something human. We are not so different, you and I, she said, her voice surprisingly gentle. Both of us are trying to survive. Both of us are fighting for our futures. Nathan looked up at her, his gaze steady. I didn't choose this, he said quietly, but I'll do whatever I can to help. Ericssel smiled faintly, a gesture of understanding. And that is why you are different, Captain. That is why I chose you. As she left the room, Nathan was left alone with his thoughts. The days ahead would not be easy, but somehow he knew that this strange and unexpected bond with the alien queen could change everything. The days on Zelath had become a strange blur for Nathan. Every morning the towering spires of the palace would greet him with a cold, intimidating beauty. Queen Ericssel was ever present in his life now, and with each passing day the bond between them grew. Complicated, unspoken, but undeniable. Though Nathan had entered this situation under duress, there was a quiet part of him that wondered if the unexpected alliance with the Zalari queen could truly change the future of both their species. But in the back of his mind, the question remained, what did it really mean for him? What did it mean for humanity? Ericssel was not a tyrant. She was not cruel. She was desperate, and in that desperation, she had made him a part of her world. He had begun to see her as more than just a queen, more than just the cold ruler of an ancient race. She was someone trying to hold together a civilization on the brink of collapse. Her people were at war and their numbers were dwindling, with few able to bear children anymore. The Zellari had fought countless battles and won many, but at what cost? And that cost, Nathan realized, was survival itself. It was during one of their many conversations in the palace gardens that the full weight of the situation hit him. "It's not just the humans I fear, Captain," Erixel said, her voice low as they walked through the blooming alien flora. "It's our own people. The factions within my court are growing restless. They see our alliance as weakness. They believe that I've grown soft, that I have lost the will to lead." Nathan studied her, noting the exhaustion in her eyes, the lines on her face that hadn't been there when he first arrived. The stress of her rule was taking its toll on her. "You've done nothing wrong. If they can't see that, then they're blind." Erixel's lips curled into a tight smile, but there was no humor in it. "I've been accused of weakness before, Captain. But this time, it's different. There's a growing faction among my people that believes our future lies in war. They want to conquer new worlds, take what we need by force. They want to destroy humanity, to bring our two species into conflict." Nathan's stomach churned. He had feared this day would come, but to hear it from her lips made it all the more real. The peace they had been striving for was fragile at best. It was like walking on thin ice, one wrong move and everything would break apart. "Who are these people?" Nathan asked, his voice a little sharper than he intended. "Many of them are powerful members of my court," Erixel answered, "loyalists to the old ways. They believe that the Zellari must rule the galaxy as we once did, through force and domination. They do not care for alliances. They do not care for peace." Nathan could see the fire in her eyes. She wasn't just talking about her people, she was talking about her future. "What are you going to do?" "I will do what I must to protect my people," she said firmly. "I will not let us fall into ruin. But these factions, these traitors, will not be easily swayed. And if they believe that my alliance with you is a weakness, then they will stop at nothing to destroy it." Nathan felt the weight of her words. The stakes had just gotten much higher. This wasn't just about saving the Zellari anymore. It was about surviving the political chaos within their own ranks, and ensuring that the future of both species wasn't torn apart by war. The Queen sighed deeply, her shoulders slumping in a rare moment of vulnerability. "I never wanted this," she muttered. "I never wanted to drag you into this madness. But now you are as much a part of it as I am. The bloodlines, the child we will have, it is the key to everything. It is the future of the Zellari and the future of humanity." Nathan didn't know what to say to that. There were so many questions swirling in his mind, and yet, the truth was clearer than ever. Erixel needed him, and perhaps despite everything, he had a responsibility to help her, and to help the Zellari and humanity. That night, in the silence of his quarters, Nathan found himself deep in thought. He had always believed in the importance of peace and diplomacy and finding common ground. But now, surrounded by alien walls, he had to question everything he thought he knew. Could there really be peace between humans and the Zellari? Could they make it work, despite the looming threat of war? The sound of footsteps interrupted his thoughts, and before he could react, Erixel entered. She looked tired, her expression shadowed by the weight of her thoughts. "I'm sorry to disturb you," she said quietly, her voice soft but laden with meaning. "I had to speak to you." Nathan stood, instinctively sensing that something was wrong. "What is it?" "What's happening?" "There's been a development," Erixel said, her tone growing serious. "The factions have made their move. One of my own generals has declared war against humanity. He has already begun rallying his forces." Nathan's chest tightened at the words. The Zellari were not known for holding back in war. Their technology and strength were unmatched. If a war broke out between their people and humanity, the consequences would be catastrophic. "Can we stop it?" Nathan asked, his voice tight. "I don't know," Erixel admitted, her gaze downcast. "I have tried to negotiate, to persuade them that war is not the answer. But they are too far gone. They believe they can conquer humanity, that they can take your resources and enslave your people. They do not understand the risks." Nathan's mind raced. This was the exact scenario he had feared, and now it was happening. A war between humanity and the Zellari seemed inevitable, and unless they acted quickly, it would tear both their civilizations apart. "We have to act," Nathan said, his voice more determined now. "We have to stop them before it's too late." Erixel's eyes lifted to meet his. You're right. I cannot fight this battle alone. But if we unite, if we stand together, we may still have a chance. Nathan nodded. He knew this was the only option. There was no turning back now. He couldn't allow the future of humanity to be decided by the whims of power-hungry generals. The Zalari were a proud race, and their queen was doing everything she could to save them. But if the factions within her own court had their way, they would destroy any hope of peace before it had a chance to bloom. As Nathan and Erixal stood there, united in their purpose, they knew that the coming days would be the most difficult they had ever faced. But they also knew that if they worked together, if they used the strength of both their people, they might still have a chance to stop the war, and perhaps, just perhaps, change the future of the galaxy forever. The tension in the palace was palpable. Every corridor, every room seemed to hold a secret, and Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The war that Erixal had feared was no longer a distant threat. It was right at their doorstep. A faction of generals, led by Erixal's own cousin, had declared open rebellion. They believed that the Zalari needed to return to their old ways: conquest, power, and domination. In their eyes, the alliance with humanity was nothing more than a weakness. Nathan had spent the last few days preparing. He knew what was at stake now, not just the future of the Zalari, but the future of humanity as well. If the war began, the human colonies wouldn't stand a chance against the Zalari's advanced technology and military might. His role was clear now. He had to help Erixal stop the war before it even started. But the pressure was growing, and as Nathan stood at the balcony of the palace, overlooking the distant mountains, he wondered if it was even possible. Could they really change the course of history? Could they stop the violence before it consumed them all? You look lost in thought, Captain. Erixal's voice broke through his reverie, and Nathan turned to see her approaching. She was dressed in her royal attire, her expression serious but focused. I'm trying to figure out how we stop all this, Nathan said, his voice tense. How we stop the war. Erixal stepped beside him, her gaze following his as she looked out at the vast landscape. It's not just about stopping the war, she replied softly. It's about saving my people. Some of them have lost their way. They see power as the only way to secure our future, but power without understanding, without unity, will only lead to destruction. Nathan nodded. He understood. The Zalari had fought and won many wars, but they had also lost so much in the process. Now they were on the brink of repeating the same mistakes. This time, though, it wasn't just the Zalari at risk. It was humanity, too. We need to find a way to change their minds, Nathan said, turning to face her. We need to show them that peace is possible, that an alliance with humanity is the only way forward. Erixal's eyes hardened. I have tried, but they are stubborn. They want bloodshed. They want victory at any cost. Nathan felt a pang of frustration. How could he help Erixal when the very people she ruled were so determined to see her fail? So what do we do now? Erixal stood tall, her eyes reflecting a fierce determination. Now we fight, but not with weapons. We fight with ideas. We have to expose the corruption within their ranks. We need to make them see that war will only lead to more destruction. It is a gamble, Captain, but it's our only chance. Nathan knew she was right. The diplomatic path was slipping away, and all they had left was the truth. They would have to take a stand, not just for the Zalari, but for humanity as well. If they didn't act now, the war would be inevitable, and it would be a war that could wipe them both out. That night, they gathered their most loyal supporters in the war room. Nathan could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him as he stood next to Erixal, surrounded by the Zalari officers and human diplomats who had pledged their allegiance to the peace they hoped to build. The room was dimly lit, the only light coming from the holographic displays that hovered above the table, showing maps of the Zalari Empire and the positions of enemy forces. We don't have much time, Erixal said, her voice commanding. The forces led by my cousin are already gathering at the borders. They are preparing to attack the human colonies. We must act quickly if we are to prevent the bloodshed. Nathan stepped forward, his eyes scanning the faces of those around the table. Some of the Zalari soldiers looked uncertain while others were resolute, their loyalty to Erixal unshaken. The humans, though, were more concerned. They had never seen war like this, and they didn't want to be the ones caught in the middle of an alien conflict. We need to disrupt their command structure, Nathan said. If we can cut off their leadership, their forces will fall apart. A Zalari officer nodded. We have a few loyalists within their ranks who are willing to help us. But the question is, how do we get to them without triggering a full-scale war? Erixal's gaze never wavered. We use their arrogance against them. My cousin believes he is untouchable. He is blinded by his pride. We will expose him. We will show his followers that he does not have their best interests at heart. Nathan glanced at Erixal, understanding the gravity of her plan. It was risky, dangerously so, but it was the only option they had left. If they could expose the corruption within the rebel faction, they might be able to turn the tide in their favor. But they had to move fast. The clock was ticking. The next few days were a blur of strategy and preparation. Nathan worked closely with the Zalari officers who had pledged loyalty to Erixal, coordinating their efforts to intercept messages, gather intelligence, and identify the key players in the rebellion. Every move they made felt like a step closer to disaster, but Nathan knew they had no choice. The future of both their species depended on it. The final confrontation came swiftly. Nathan stood at the helm of the human ship, the Vanguard, looking down at the battlefield below. The rebel forces had gathered near a key Zalari stronghold, ready to strike the first blow in a war that would destroy any hope of peace. It was up to Nathan, Erixal, and their team to stop them before it was too late. "This is it," Nathan said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "We move in, we expose the corruption, and we show them that peace is the only way forward." Erixal stood beside him, her expression hard. "If this fails, it will mean the end of everything." "I know," Nathan replied, "but we have to try." With a signal, the fleet moved forward. The plan was simple: create a diversion, infiltrate the rebel command center, and expose the truth behind their leaders' actions. But nothing was simple in war, and the rebel forces were prepared for them. The battle was intense. Laser fire lit up the dark sky as ships from both sides clashed in a brutal dance of destruction. But Nathan didn't focus on the chaos around him. His eyes were fixed on the rebel command center, the heart of the enemy forces. He knew that if they could take it, they could win. Erixal's forces moved in with precision, their tactics as sharp as their weapons. Nathan and a small team of humans and loyal Zalari soldiers infiltrated the command center. It was a risky move, but they had to do it. They had to confront the rebel leader, expose his treachery, and show his followers that he was not the savior he claimed to be. The final showdown took place in a dimly lit chamber deep within the rebel stronghold. Nathan, Erixal, and their team stood face to face with Erixal's cousin, the leader of the rebellion. He was a tall, imposing figure, his eyes filled with arrogance as he looked down at them. "You think you can stop me?" he sneered. "I will lead the Zalari to glory, not weakness. You are nothing but traitors." Erixal's voice was calm but filled with authority. "You have betrayed your people. You have betrayed the future of the Zalari. I will not let you destroy us." With that, they exposed his corruption to his own followers, proof of his plans to exploit war for his own power. The truth shattered his supporters' loyalty. The tide turned swiftly, and the rebellion began to crumble. As the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place, Nathan stood beside Erixal, watching the destruction of a faction that had threatened to tear their worlds apart. The battle was over, but the war for peace had only just begun. "We did it," Nathan said, his voice quiet. Erixal nodded. "For now, yes. But the future is uncertain. We must continue to build our alliance, humanity and the Zalari. We must work together or we will lose everything." Nathan looked at her, understanding. "We will together,"